Welcome back to Reconnect, a podcast where I'll be interviewing small business owners, entrepreneurs, and many more as we connect, learn, and grow together. Join us as I have a conversation with Danielle Park, owner of Yours with Every Stitch, on today's episode. Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Welcome on to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for taking the time out of your day and out of, you said, slow season. So
yes, thank goodness.
It's perfect timing.
It is perfect
we came
timing,
across,
yeah.
and I know I gave you some clothes to work on earlier in the year. And
Yeah.
you texted me.
Rough. I was like,
You texted me like, you got me most of my clothes back, and then we had a few alterations to do, and I was like, no rush, and you were like, thank you so
I
much.
was like, thank you. Let me get
And then
through
it was
this
like,
season.
and I was in no rush at all, I promise.
Yeah.
And it was like months later, you texted me and you're like, all right, I got them done. And I was like,
Finally.
it's just like, hey, how's it, like caught up with you and told you that I started a podcast, and you're like, hell yeah, I want to be on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is awesome.
yeah, thank you. So tell everybody a little bit about your story. How did you, what do you do? How did you get started? Things like that.
Okay, awesome. So I'm a bridal seamstress. This past year I actually transitioned from all alterations to bridal and formal only because I kind of found out the demand is crazy, which we can talk about later.
Sure.
So I started. I've sewn my whole life since I was 8 years old, and I started kind of the entrepreneurship journey the second semester of my senior year in high school. I went to Calvert, so my senior year I didn't have a lot of classes.
Sure.
I could go home and I could work on my own business, do a lot of sewing. So I started setting up at Jam's monthly markets right across from Calvert. So it was really nice and easy because it was right there.
Yeah.
And Jamie welcomed me in. She was super welcoming. It was awesome.
She's super sweet.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
And I started selling kids' clothes, just like toddler or baby clothes.
Gotcha.
It's easy to get started with because there's not a lot of supply costs and all that.
Yeah.
Takes a little less time than adult clothes, easier to fit.
Sure.
And those went off pretty well. I started an Etsy store, but that didn't go super far because Etsy's hard to market on. So locally, everyone was super supportive. I had a little sign in my booth that said I do alterations, and that blew up. I had my cell number on there, and that went crazy. I was still in high school, second semester, senior year, pretty busy, and I was getting texts and calls like every day from people that needed alterations. So at this point, I was doing it out of my house. So I was having people, and I still live with my parents, obviously. So I was having people to my house. They're very supportive. They're also business owners. So my parents were
very understanding,
100% on board, and they were like, yeah, whatever you need to do.
For sure.
I had a good space at home, but I was not the greatest. I have cats. I'm like, what if someone's allergic to cats?
Very thoughtful.
Yeah. So I was like looking for a storefront as soon as possible after I graduated. And like I said, Jamie's awesome. So she knew my current landlord, Tyler, really well, and texted me one night and was like, there's a perfect space for you, and we're the only ones that know about it, and I'm going to come look at it with you. So we got lunch, we looked at it. It was perfect, and I'm still here. This is where we are.
And where are you located at?
So I'm in the Laird Arcade in downtown Tiffin.
Perfect. So
it's a really nice central location. I've always loved the Laird.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a community of businesses.
Right. Community businesses right downtown. It's perfect. It's good, traction for people that come downtown, walk through the building.
Yes.
You got restaurants.
Yes.
You need a wedding dress.
Right. And there's a lot of other wedding vendors in this building.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a one-stop shop.
Right.
So I'm always looking for
nails done, get your hair done.
Getting your hair done, makeup. We have
do a little yoga, relax before the wedding.
I know she also choreographs like for dances and stuff.
For dancing too. That's right.
It's perfect. And every time a space is open in the Laird, I'm looking for another wedding vendor to fill it. So perfect location.
For sure.
I couldn't have asked for more.
Good.
So I signed my lease a month after I graduated. I opened the month after, so I opened July 2021.
Yeah.
And it blew up. I was overwhelmed for about a year and a half. And I had no slow seasons. It was crazy. And I kind of discovered that bridal was my favorite thing to do. And I'm definitely trying to look for what I enjoy, because the greatest thing about being an entrepreneur is you can do what you like, and you can have a flexible schedule, and that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
So I discovered I liked bridal the most. So I ended up transitioning to that shortly after I went appointment only.
Right.
Because I started having my sewing space and my fitting space in the same location in this room, and it was
A bit much.
yeah.
I could
So
imagine.
I'd be sewing and someone would walk in and I'd have to stop and I wouldn't get anything
Yeah.
done. So about like last October, I moved my workroom finally out of this space, right across the hall, and then not much longer after that, I moved out
You're
of
like,
that.
that's not far
space.
enough away.
It wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
I was very
You just
cramped.
outgrew the space.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I was looking. I threw around maybe possibly having like an actual storefront on Washington Street.
Okay.
Decided against that.
Yeah.
And now I have a workroom on the second floor.
Mhm.
That's 3 rooms.
Oh,
It's
wow.
amazing. I've got natural light. I'm not in a dungeon anymore all day.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. I can spread out and bridal formal only, and it's been great.
That's amazing to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
In just such a short time too.
It was
2 years,
so
not even.
fast.
Yeah,
In 2
just
years,
in
I
2
moved
years.
like
Yeah.
twice, and it was crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
But good for you. Like obviously that speaks that, your work is excellent. I can vouch for it because I have some
Thanks.
clothes. But for people that don't know, obviously that speaks volumes that, you came in, you started with alterations, you got so busy with everything that you're like, I just want to do dresses.
Yeah, just
And
specializing.
in bridal, not just dressing, but yeah. And so, what made you make that choice besides, you said you graduated in 2021, so it's like probably right around the middle or towards the tail end of COVID. And so what made you make that decision to, open your business versus going to college like most high school students do?
Yeah, so I honestly made that decision in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
Because my original plan, I had taken all of my like gen ed courses through CCP because I was
Gotcha.
planning on like, I'm gonna have all this done. So I took a lot of college classes
Yeah.
in high school that I really didn't end up using. But I decided in the midst of COVID that I would rather start a business than go to college. And I realized that one of the biggest things that I wanted to go to college for was for the experience.
Sure.
My original plan was to go to Kent State for fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to some of the graduates from that program, and what they ended up doing was not what I wanted to do. A lot of them were working for for the fashion industry,
Sure.
for big companies.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were laid off within a year because they like to keep their workers fresh.
Gotcha.
And I was like, that's not really what I want to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of them wouldn't actually be doing the sewing, which is like the process, the creativity is what
Sure.
is my favorite part.
Gotcha.
So it's like, that wouldn't really be what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, my parents are business owners, like I said, so it was really an almost easy decision.
Sure.
It's weird to think about now that I was so like, yeah, I just won't go to college.
Right.
And I'm so glad I made that decision.
Yeah.
Because it's been amazing. Worked so well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I always try to encourage people in high school now to like give that some thought.
A thought.
If it's
At least a thought.
at least a thought. At
Right.
least a thought that it's an option.
Yes.
And you don't have to go to college to be successful.
Right.
And try the trades out.
Yeah.
Trades are great.
We need
So
we
and
need
we
trades.
need trades.
I
This
mean,
country really needs
we
trades.
did have a short discussion. We, limited time, but it could be a conversation on its own. Is that the trades, and especially your field, there is like a massive need for
Massive. Yeah.
for workers and for the skill set, because it's not so much that people don't want to do it, it's the skill set's not being passed on from
Yes.
generation to generation.
Yeah.
And you even said that you went out and you learned it yourself, and it's just something that you uniquely
Yeah,
enjoyed.
completely self-taught.
But through that process, and you reaching out to other business owners, you've come across that it seems that there's a huge need in the fashion industry, and especially in sewing.
Yeah, seamstresses, independent seamstresses
Yeah.
are like really dwindling right now. If you think about it, I always tell this story when I was first started my business and I joined the chamber.
Yeah.
They came in and they were like, I was expecting an 80-year-old, like, what's happening? So, like, and so many people are always super surprised when they walk in to see someone younger, because most people are, you know, older, in their 80s or just about to retire.
Sure.
And it's just hasn't been really passed down, and home ec isn't in schools anymore, so people aren't even seeing that that's an option to learn. They just assume that it's not needed, so that's like a dead skill, which is couldn't be farther from the truth, like especially for bridal. And I mean, everyday clothing is also huge demand. So, but yeah, especially for bridal, I think like last year they took a poll and they did some surveying, and there was like 45,000 seamstresses employed in the U.S.
And how many?
2.6 million couples
got
married.
Wow.
Those numbers are really terrifying to me.
If you do the division on that, it's like 0.000% probably.
And
something.
like just to give people an idea, like I did 95 brides this past year.
Okay.
That was really stretching myself thin.
I'm sure.
So that's just brides. That's not counting the bridesmaids I did and all that. And I had to turn away so many brides to other seamstresses. And
what is the importance of a seamstress in the bridal game? Like, I think that, you know, those who have gotten married understand it, but those who haven't yet, can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So every dress that you buy from the store has just a standard size. And it's, you know, 14, 12, whatever. And the size chart is actually totally different from everyday clothing too, which makes it even harder for women who are shopping for a bridal gown, because they're not their normal size. So they're super confused. They go to a bridal shop, they get their measurements, and then the bridal shop workers try their hardest to put their measurements into a box.
Gotcha.
And, you know, there's usually 3 measurements, best, waist, hip, and no one is in the box.
Of course not. Why would they be?
I think
everybody's unique to their own self.
Yeah, everyone is bodies are unique, and that's why I have a job. And I think I've maybe had, in the 2 years that I've been open, I've had maybe 2 brides that fit the dress perfectly.
Gotcha.
And height is also a huge thing, because they have to make it extra long because it's easier to take off than add on.
Sure.
So, and that's a huge thing. And most dresses are constructed in a very complicated way. A lot more they just keep getting more and more complicated. I've looked at vintage dresses and I'm like, this is so easy. Why don't they do this anymore?
Gotcha.
So they've definitely made them harder to alter. So you can't just go to your grandma anymore and have her alter your dress.
Right.
It's you got to find a professional who knows what they're doing.
For sure. Absolutely. And I want to go back to, you know, picking the decision to open a business versus going to like college. I think, like, especially my generation per se, I'm not very old, but college was like, I don't want to say pushed, but it was like, you need to go to college, you need to get a degree, you won't get a job without a degree. If you want a good paying job, you need a degree, yada, 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 so on and so forth. And then you go into the workforce, and the reality of the situation is they don't pay you shit for having a degree, and they still start you off like everybody else. And like, especially in the trades, you can learn a skill set. You know, is college important? It's an experience. I've certainly developed a set of skill sets at college because I went there, but I don't even use my degree anymore. You know, so it's like, what's the trade-off? And, you know, the return on investment for me has been more that I'm in debt than I have a return on my investment. So it's just like, do you see that when you graduated high school and like the COVID life, were they still trying to like push people to go to college and get a degree and, you know, go into the workforce?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it's confusing to me.
For sure. I felt the pressure because that was just what you were going to do. That was your path. Like we would have meetings with the guidance counselor and it'd be like, where are you going to college?
Yeah.
And I always had that plan until second semester of senior year, and I was like, well, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely still felt that push.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's they also don't have a degree for what I'm doing.
Okay.
They have a fashion design degree,
Right.
but that does not teach you the intricacies of construction.
Right.
You learn like the basics of fit, but that's like from scratch, which is a totally different thing.
Gotcha.
To be a seamstress, to be a bridal seamstress especially, you have to understand how to make clothing from scratch, but you also have to understand like how to do that and then back it up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're basically taking apart a puzzle that someone else put together.
Sure.
And putting it back together
Yeah.
in the same way. And yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to do that.
It's just so much more intricate than
Sure.
even what they teach you in fashion design
Gotcha.
school.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's not a degree that would even teach me this.
Okay.
So I was
What's
like,
the
what's
point?
the point, really?
Yeah, right.
Like, I was like,
Yeah.
it's not really worth just the experience.
I think
So,
you made the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard that from a lot of people,
Yeah.
but once in a while I still get told like, oh, well, you can always go back. And I'm like, oh.
The hopers and the dreamers,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
that still believe in it.
Yeah.
You know, I agree with you. I think everybody should still at least take a look and think it through, make that decision. Is college really what you want to do?
Yes.
You know, I wasn't a big school person, but what I wanted to do, it did make sense for me to go to college.
Right.
And, but growing up, things change.
Yeah.
And I found that now I want to go into business and be an entrepreneur and, you know, like you said, find what I love to do.
Yes.
And, you know, I've been lucky enough to take that time and find what I love to do. And now I get to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to go to college to figure out what you want to do, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a good, you know, like the experience is one thing, but it is to take the time in your young development to really figure out, you know, because you can take your prereq classes and be like, well, I don't want to do this. I do want to do this. And then you get into like your major classes and you're like, this is really cool. This is really interesting.
Yeah.
But you might not want to do that as a job, you know, so that it's just, it's a good experience.
Yeah. I was very lucky to have the opportunity to explore that when I was in high school.
In high school, right.
Yeah.
Because that is a huge thing. You know, the CCP courses, for people that don't know, can you know, just briefly explain what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, if you have like an opening in your schedule, which I had a lot of those, I was a very good student. I was actually valedictorian and didn't go to college. So that's a fun story.
Yeah.
But basically, if you have some openings in your schedule, we have 2 colleges in this town.
Right.
The CCP program basically pays for these college classes.
Okay.
So you can get ahead. A lot of the time, these credits that you take, they can transfer depending on what school you go to. There's some schools that don't take them, and then you have to take classes twice, which is no fun. But you know, if you're planning on going to college, you want to get some classes out of the way.
Yeah.
You can take those at TU or Heidelberg, and they can be online or they can be in class.
Yeah.
And they're super nice to get.
And it kind of
of
speeds up your college time as well.
Yes.
Like I had student workers that worked under me, and one of them came in and she graduated in like 2 years because she had so many CCP classes that it just like wiped out half of her college career pretty much.
Yeah.
And I was like, good on you.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's
like,
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
All right. So getting back to alterations and bridal work, you got so busy that you went out. And did you find someone to help you with the alterations?
Yeah.
And, you know, so you told me a bit about the story, and I'll let you share it. And, you know, we kind of came up with, you know, the collaboration is not competition for Reconnect and for the community. And I think this is like the prime example of collaboration is not competition. So do you mind sharing everybody what you did?
Gosh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
So when I actually was looking to switch to bridal way earlier than I did.
Yeah.
That was just my dream. I just needed to do that, but I wasn't about to do it when I didn't have anyone to cover all of the general alterations.
Gotcha.
I have the best, most loyal customers in the world.
And there's a need in the community
a huge
for it.
need. A huge need. Like I said, I was just overwhelmed immediately. Like this town is so supportive.
Right.
And yeah, so I was not about to switch when I didn't have anyone to send them to.
Sure.
And I had a list of people, but I didn't really know any of them personally. And I was like, if I had someone that I knew and had a good connection with and we could like collab, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really, a lot of people are like, well, why didn't you just hire someone? It's not something I want to do.
Right.
I feel like my business doesn't need more than one person, especially what I've gotten it to.
Sure.
And it's such an intricate process that more people would just cause more stress and more miscommunication, and we don't need that.
Yeah. Right.
So I was actually contacted by, her name's Jenny, about, I think it was probably about a year ago, actually.
Okay.
I was called, and she had just moved to Tiffin. She was in, I believe, like Southern Ohio, had her own business for about 5 years as a seamstress. And she moved to Tiffin and saw my newspaper article and was so excited to see someone young who was doing it.
Yeah.
She called me and we talked for like an hour on the phone, just like catching up. Like, I love talking to seamstresses because they're all the same, honestly.
Right.
They're all so sweet, and they all are super passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And she was just like so amazed by what I did, and I was like, well, let's meet up.
Yeah.
Like, so we met up last year, just talked. She wasn't really super interested in starting her own business at the time. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that. Like, obviously she just moved.
Right.
So, you know, but I kept encouraging her because I was like, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So earlier this year, she opened her own business in the Laird with me. She's on the second floor. So a lot of people are confused. We are separate businesses, but we work as colleagues, as collaborators.
Right.
I'm always happy to send her people, and she's always happy to send me people.
Yeah.
Depending on, you know, if they're really busy, it's like, oh, I got this. You know, but normally she does the general items and I do the formal items.
Sure.
But in busy season, I'm sending her brides. I'm sending her because that's her background. She used to work at, I believe she got trained by Henry's. She worked at David's Bridal for a time.
Gotcha.
So that's what she's trained in.
Sure.
But I talked to her and she had no problem with doing a lot of general stuff. So I was like, all right.
So I got some for you.
Yeah, I got a lot for you. So I'm sending her people like daily at this point because I'm still getting those calls, which I have no problem with. I love talking to people and explaining it.
Right.
Because a lot of people are very confused by what's
I bet.
happening. So especially when we're in the same building.
Right.
Like, I've gotten calls about the post she's made. I'm like, that's the other one.
Yeah.
And now she's actually doing sewing classes too, which is something I wanted to do, but never had time. And honestly, I don't know if I have the patience.
Fair enough.
That's something you need, and I don't think
Definitely.
I don't think I have a teacher in my blood. So
yeah.
I saw that she was doing that, and that's
pretty cool.
That's amazing.
And
it
this
made
is
me so happy.
Secret Seamstress?
The Secret Seamstress is her business name.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
She's on the second floor, right down the hall from where I do my sewing, which is up there too. So yeah.
I mean, that is amazing. And that, like I said, that when I started, is that collaborating and sharing, even business. Technically, you shared business, with another person.
That's what we're doing,
and you both can be successful in the same building.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing.
Yeah.
With the same background.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
incredible
cool.
because, like, once in a while, like, if I need something in a pinch, and she might have that supply that I don't.
Right.
And I've gotten a call from her, and she's like, I am in a pinch right now. I need this very specific thing. And I was like, let me check. And I had it, and it was great. And I just love having that in the same building. We can bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah. I've always noticed seamstresses have, for the longest time, have been very competitive, even if they're just out of their houses. And it's just really toxic. Yeah. They down talk the other ones. And there's no need for that because there is more than enough business to go around.
For sure.
Honestly, yeah. And like Tiffin is now like the central location for seamstresses because there's two in the same town.
Right.
So yeah, I there's no need for competition.
Yeah. Or, like the talking behind the back or the negativity or I do this better than this person.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that side of business
Yeah,
either. Like
yeah.
it doesn't make sense, and that's kind of why I started Reconnect. Was
Mhm.
like, let's reconnect people and at least hopefully show people that we can work together to
Yeah.
make our community stronger.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did.
Mhm.
And without, public notice or anything like that, really, you just
Mhm.
went out of your way to work together to make it
Mhm.
fit.
Yeah.
And it seems like it is working.
Yeah.
So
I saw a need in the community and I was like, why not?
why not?
I was like, this is gonna help me a lot too.
Yeah.
And like I can say I've been a lot more clear headed with not so much business, and
Sure.
it's a lot easier to run a specialized business than
Yeah.
something that does everything.
Which
you know?
in, like, weddings
Mhm.
happen every week,
Yeah.
multiple times.
Every week. Yeah.
Every week, multiple times a week.
Uh-huh.
It is a big business.
Mhm.
And, COVID slowed that down and pushed
Mhm.
everything backwards.
Uh-huh.
And I know when we were talking, people should probably start planning ahead a little bit more than they're used to,
Mhm.
even in a small town,
Mhm.
but across the nation,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to dress fittings
Yes.
and things
Book
like
your
that.
seamstress when you get your dress. That's always what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because the amount of brides I've had to turn away because they're calling me like a month before their wedding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and it's peak bridal season.
Right.
And I'm like, I physically would not be sleeping
Yeah.
if I took you.
Right.
So, just having more seamstresses like
Yeah.
Jenny is really helpful. So at least they can get something done,
Yeah. Right.
So.
Because where is the next, I would say, like, next local storefront seamstress
Storefront
in Ohio?
seamstress?
Or even, I guess, out of their house that you would, like, go to?
I
Do you know
genuinely
any?
don't know
Okay.
anyone personally.
Yeah.
Because I will say that when I first opened my business, I think I heard of at least 3 storefronts
Gotcha.
closing.
Okay.
Because they
Yeah.
were retiring.
That's a great thing to hear when you're starting a business.
Yeah, and everyone's like, well, that's a great thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because all of these, like
Right.
one of them was in Findlay, and she had like 6 people working for her.
Okay.
And she had independent contractors.
Sure.
And she told me, I actually went and visited her because I got to know her through 4-H. I went and visited her, and she said she did like 6 weddings a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, yeah, I'm retiring at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So, and then someone in Perrysburg I know closed, and
Okay.
so I honestly don't know anyone personally.
Right.
And with David's Bridal filing for bankruptcy again, I know that they've kind of backed off on a lot of the alterations from what I've heard.
Gotcha.
Because right when that happened, I got a lot of calls of people that are like, suddenly I was called and they can't do my dress, and the wedding is
Okay.
in 3 weeks or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just crazy.
Yeah.
So honestly, yeah, I don't know of a lot of other local
Gotcha.
seamstresses.
So book your appointments early.
Yes, please. Yes.
If you're in high school or even older and you want to get into
Yes.
the seamstress
honestly,
business,
yeah.
you can take classes from Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get into
And
it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, Danielle, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you
It was
so
a great
much.
conversation.
Yeah.
I look forward to working with you through Reconnect in the future and hopefully having you back on the podcast again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Of course. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Reconnect. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Danielle Park, owner of Yours with Every Stitch, and gained valuable insights to the world of a seamstress. Until next time, keep forging ahead on your path of discovery and success. Take care, everybody.